Hey guys, what's up? You at the show? I'm sorry guys, just trying to get a video back with pretty much a cool on there, but I thought they topic paper because your topic paper is cool, so yeah. Yeah, so today this video going to react to JTVideos PS4 Reverse MCU PS4 Part 2, so yeah. So it's gonna be fun, so we have seen my Part 1 last videos there. So, and then we heard then about Daredevil Reborn Legends Heroes came out. So we're not going to do this video to reaction, so we may go doing in February because I'm going to watch all part 10s and today's video previous MCU, but PS4, yes, so today's video was my favorite YouTuber ever, so we're going to reaction from. So before the video, make sure and thumb up and then don't subscribe. So see what, so 1, 2, 3 reaction.
Imagine a place for your money where you're in control.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rebooted MCU. Today we are here with Phase 4 Part 2. I want to go ahead and apologize if the audio sounds a little bit different. I'm in a new recording area, and it's probably where I'll be recording for the next few episodes. So if the audio is a little bit different, that's why. I hope it's not too different though. But without any further ado, we have a lot to get through today, so let's go ahead and jump right into the second project of Rebooted MCU Phase 4. The second project of Rebooted MCU Phase 4 is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Reborn. The movie opens up in the microverse, where we take note of the surroundings, when suddenly we see the Wasp, played by Emily Blunt, collecting quantum energy. She speaks and says, "Okay, Eric, you can bring me up." We watch as Wasp returns to the basement from the previous Ant-Man and the Wasp film. Standing in the room are Eric O'Grady, played by Dan Stevens, and Ava Starr, played by Hannah John Kamen. Wasp removes her helmet, walks over, and uses the quantum energy on Ava. She says, "And that, Ava, means that you are completely clear of any quantum phasing." We watch as Ava begins tearing up and hugs Janet, saying, thank you so much, Janet. I have struggled my whole life with this, but now I'm finally able to be free again." Janet smiles. "Well, Hank made a promise to your father, and I couldn't let you or him down. Even though this is all over, please make sure you're not a stranger." Janet and Ava hug again as Janet looks at Eric and says, "Thanks to you too, Eric. We couldn't have done it without you. I hate to cut this weekly reunion short, but I have places to be, and Eric, you need to get back to PIM Technologies." Eric smiles and says, "Yes, ma'am, Miss Van Dyne, and here's your weekly reminder. We are looking forward to having you back whenever you're ready." Janet smiles and says, "All in due time, Eric." We watch as Eric and Ava drive away from the Van Dyne household. As we watch Janet get into her car, she sits down and begins to cry as we see a picture of Hank on her dashboard. We cut to a pizza restaurant. We watch as...
Shout out to Hank Pine recipe. It's so sad he died and then represents you. 3 Avengers Endgame. So sad. So you have seen my reaction PS3 recap, so yeah.
Janet walks in and looks around until she spots Maria Hill, played by Kobe Smulders, who waves her over. As Janet sits down in the booth, Maria asks how she has been doing. Janet explains that things are great. She spent the past few months working with Ava to completely heal her of quantum phasing, and Eric has seemed to have been making a killing running PIM Technologies, and she's been doing great. As the waitress walks over, Janet orders a beer as Maria looks at her and says, "Jan, it's 11 a.m. Janet rolls her eyes as Maria leans across the table and says, "Jan, be honest with me. Are you sure you're doing okay? Are you still going to grief counseling?" "Well, I was, but it just became such a waste of time. I mean, how helpful can someone telling me how to cope be when I am going to cope in my own way? You know me, Maria. I'm a stubborn one. I'm going to do what I think is best for me. I really don't care what some counselor has to say about it." Maria leans back over and places her hand on Janet's. "Look, I know I'm not going to talk you into doing anything, but if you ever need anything, anyone, I'm here for you, okay? You can call me anytime. You have a lot of people who love you." "Thanks, Maria." Now back to the reason we're meeting. Any update on the stolen suit? We found out that following the blip, the United States government suffered a security meltdown, which resulted in various weapons being stolen in the midst of the chaos that unfolded. Part of the stolen weaponry was the Ant-Man suit seized by the government during the events of Captain America's Civil War. We've been tracking it for a while now. It has passed from buyer to buyer, but nobody has used it until now. We see Maria pull out her phone as she shows Janet a video of someone dressed as Ant-Man running around with the suit. We only have security footage, but from what we've been able to gather, his name is Scott Lang, a notorious thief, most well known for stealing classified documents from Vista Corp and releasing them to the public. Some people regard him as a hero for the little guy, while other people, like me, consider him nothing more than a thief. Okay, well, first question. How the heck can some low-level crook manage to figure out how to use the Ant-Man suit? It's a complicated device. Not just anyone can pick it up and master it. Well, remember how Dr. Foster was able to figure out the controls in such a short amount of time? Lang is not a low IQ thug. He's got his master's degree in electrical engineering from Empire State and was actually working at Vista Corp as a senior supervisor to the engineering department. Janet leans back. Wow. Okay. So regardless, he's been using the Ant-Man suit to commit a string of crimes. What is this, some sort of game to him? Well, we're not exactly sure, but he isn't harming anyone or being malicious outside of thievery. We really don't know a motive behind his actions, but so far he's only robbed a few banks and a toy store, for some odd reason. Janet looks down. So some doofus is tarnishing Hank's legacy by running around and robbing things for fun. Why can't people just leave me and my family alone? Leave Hank alone. Let him rest. Janet begins tearing up as the waitress walks over, hands Janet her beer, and asks the two for their order. We cut to that night as we see Janet sitting in her bed, watching the security camera footage of Lang that was sent to her by Maria. We see Janet begin to think as she cuts back to Hank sacrificing himself during Endgame. Janet begins to get teary-eyed, but then gets angry and throws her phone across the room. We see her begin breathing heavily as she pounds her fist on her bed multiple times. We then see her look over to her nightstand, where a picture of her and Hank sit. She says to herself, Hank, what am I going to do without you? I can't stop thinking about you. Suddenly, Janet perks up, thinking about Hank, but maybe I should be thinking like Hank. We see Janet jump up out of bed and run downstairs to the basement, and we watch as she logs onto Hank's old computer after making a few...
So yeah, I'm going to move in that because that's the battery right now, so you just sort of, I'm going to move that bed cover, so hold on. I may get a new idea again. Remove this. So you can see me. What the? You see?
Watch as she pulls up a GPS tracking device where we see the location of the stolen Ant-Man suit. Janet chuckles to herself. Henry Pym, you are a genius. Watch as she opens up a closet sitting next to the computer with the Wasp uniform inside. Janet looks at it for a minute before grabbing it, and she runs back upstairs. So pick up her phone and dial a number. Hey, Eric? I know it's late, but I need your help with something. We cut to Eric and Janet in Eric's car together. Eric is watching Hank's computer as he is driving and asks Janet, so this is where the suit is, huh? Yep, and the lowlife who stole it is about to get what he has coming to him. Well, do you need my help, Jan? Like, is there anything I can do?
I need to talk to you. We need help. We're being pushed to our limit by wars and natural disasters. And more emergencies are coming. Just like you, we have to do more and more with money that doesn't go as far as it used to. I know that this is a hard act.
Thanks for the offer, Eric, but I got this. I need you to drop me off and call 911 when I give you the signal. Eric pulls up in front of a run-down apartment building, and we watch as Janet shrinks down and flies out of the slightly cracked car window. We cut to the inside of a room where we see a man sitting down on the edge of his bed, looking at a letter talking about late rent, and we hear him sigh. When suddenly the Wasp grows to normal size and kicks the man off the bed as he hits the ground, he moans and turns around to see the Wasp grown back to full size. The man is revealed to be Scott Lang, played by Stephen Ewan. Janet screams at him. You took something of mine, something that means everything to me, and you turned it into a symbol of crime. Oh, whoa. You have it all wrong, lady. We watch as Janet screams. She shrinks back down and begins beating Scott, who runs into the bathroom and slams the door as Janet returns to normal size. We listen to rustling in the bathroom as Janet claws at the door and eventually returns to the shrunken Wasp to fly under the door. As she does, she comes face to face with Ant-Man, who screams, "Look, lady, I don't want to hurt you or anything. I mean no harm. This is a big misunderstanding." We then watch as Wasp and Ant-Man begin to fight. The Wasp is easily overpowering Ant-Man, who is clearly unskilled when it comes to using the Ant-Man suit's full capabilities. As the fight moves to the hallway, we watch as Ant-Man returns to normal size and Scott removes the mask and puts his hands up. "Look, lady, this is a big misunderstanding. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for..." Before Scott can get another word out, he falls to the ground as we see Eric behind him holding a baseball bat. Janet stands stunned, and Eric says, "Sorry, you were taking a while." Cut to a few hours later as we watch Scott being dragged away in handcuffs by police. We see Janet and Eric standing outside as Jimmy Woo, played by Randall Park, walks up to Janet and Eric and says, "Well, thanks for helping us out with Mr. Lang here. He's going to be joining some of your old friends in prison." "The Raft?" Woo laughs. "Oh, no. Just New York State Prison. He would get eaten up at the Raft, but your old friend Getz is in there, so he'll at least have someone he can talk with about getting their butt handed to them by the Wasp." As Woo walks away, we see Janet hug Eric and says, "Eric, listen, I really wanted to thank you for your help tonight." As she says this, we watch Maria Hill run up to Janet and asks, "Oh my gosh, Jan, are you okay?" Janet smiles. "Better than I have been in a long time, Maria, because for the first time in the last couple months, I feel like it's time for Ant-Man and the Wasp to get back in action." Watch as she looks to Eric, who gasps and says, Whoa. You mean me?
Yeah.
You want me to be the new Ant-Man?" Of course. Hank would not want anything more. We will have to train, of course, but after that, Ant-Man and the Wasp will be back in action." As Eric begins smiling, Maria looks at Janet and says, Jan, can I talk to you for a minute?" We watch as Maria and Janet walk away from Eric. Maria looks at Janet and says, "Jan, does this not feel a bit rash to you? I don't know if I trust Eric. He was a nobody at S.H.I.E.L.D., and we really don't know much about him. This all just seems to be a decision made way too quickly."
Hold on, Dad, I'll just give me a cover one for the... Then you got a nice worm so I can move him and not poop with my feet, so... Oops. Something stuck, hold on. Hold on.
Jan cares. Look, Maria.
Shit. Sorry. Hold on now. There you go.
I get it. You're trying to look out for me and all. This is getting a bit much. I'm fine. I'm capable of making strong choices for myself. Got it? As we watch Janet storm away, Hill takes out her phone and dials a number and walks away from the scene. Janet walks back to Eric and says, 6 a.m. tomorrow. Your training begins. Eric pumps his fist as the two walk back to the car. Cut to a montage of Eric and Janet training together. We see Eric learning how to properly shrink down and perform punches while growing and shrinking at the same time, using the EMP communicator to talk with ants and also hand-to-hand combat with Janet. We slowly watch as Eric begins to get better and better, and Janet begins to grow happier and happier. We cut to the inside of New York State Prison, where we see Lyle Getz, played by John Glazer, sitting in a visitation room. A month has passed since Eric and Janet began training. We see the door open and an officer walks inside with an unknown man. The officer points to a seat and says, "Have a seat right there, Mr. Forson. You'll be right outside." As the man sits down, he's revealed to be Andrew Forson, played by John Cusack, who looks up at Getz and says, "Ah, Lyle. How is prison treating you?" "Cut the crap, Andrew. Has there been any progress made on rebuilding AIM?" "Well, I have been working with our new recruit on his suit, but besides that, nothing new. But there is an idea, and I wanted to have a three-way discussion about it." He watches Forson pulls out a walkie-talkie. He presses a button and says, "Hello, Mr. Raft himself, are you there?" "Enough with the jokes about the raft," screams MODOK, voiced by Bill Hader. "This better be important." Forson laughs. "Of course it is. Well, my street intel has been telling me that the new associate of Miss Van Dyne is not exactly who he claims to be, and, well, let's just say money speaks to him." "What exactly does that have to do with anything, Andrew?" "Well, he might have an in at PIM Technologies, and if the price is right, he might have enough influence to give us the whole thing. You know, take back what was rightfully ours from the beginning." "Ah, I like it, I do. But you know that the Wasp will be after us if we meddle in her affairs. What can we do to stop her?" Forson laughs. "Well, I guess we can test our new recruit, see if he's powerful enough."
When I first started Eve, I was a minor, and I was really tired of...
"Well, if it gets me closer to getting out of here, I don't have an issue with it." MODOK coughs. "Well, it can't hurt. We don't have any other cards to play. If this works, I expect that you will find a way to release me as soon as possible." Forson smiles. "Yes, indeed, sir. Gentlemen, it looks like we have a plan. We'll be in communication again real soon." He watches Forson gets up and walks away. We cut to the inside of PIM Technologies, where we see Eric signing some sort of legal document as he looks up at Janet and says, "Miss Van Dyne, majority owner? Are you sure?" Janet smiles. "Eric, Hank would be so happy to see everything you have done for his legacy. 75% ownership is perfectly reasonable considering all you have done. In fact, it might be a little bit of an undersell." Eric begins smiling when we watch as a PIM technology worker runs into the room and says, "Miss Van Dyne, you might want to see this." Watch the news report is showing that a man dressed in a green metallic suit is destroying parks and monuments around New York City by spinning around in circles, fast enough that it is causing massive damage. Janet looks at Eric and says, "You ready for your first real test?" Eric nods. "Born ready." We then cut to the park where we see the man in the green metallic suit spinning around, tearing up grass and trees. Suddenly we watch as Wasp and Ant-Man grow to normal size and the man stops spinning. Janet looks at him and says, "What the heck are you, and why are you going around destroying public property?" "Oh, Miss Van Dyne, it is a pleasure." We see the helmet shrink off of the suit, and the man inside is revealed to be David Cannon, played by Kevin Lutz, who says, "I am called the Whirlwind, for obvious reasons, and well, let's just say I enjoy doing bad stuff because it helps me pay the bills and passes the time." Watch as his mask returns and he begins spinning around. We then watch as Ant-Man and the Wasp fight Whirlwind. See Janet begin to get overpowered when suddenly Eric calls a swarm of ants that crawl into Whirlwind's helmet. As Cannon begins to scream, we watch as Janet and Eric take advantage of this and defeat Whirlwind. We watch as people begin to cheer. We see Forson standing at a building nearby. He picks up the walkie-talkie from earlier and presses a button. "MODOK, sir. I believe we might have a dual purpose for this gentleman." We watch Wu and Hill at the scene helping to arrest Cannon as we see Eric talking with the media as he begins to gloat. "My name is Eric O'Grady and I'm the new Ant-Man. Under my watch, New York will be protected. Everyone around here, you better watch your back. And anyone who wants to do bad, I'm on the scene now, so think again." As a crowd celebrating Whirlwind's defeat begins to cheer, we see Hill looking concerned. We cut to a bar that evening where we see a girl sitting alone watching the news reporting an attack at Sword in California. The girl takes a sip of a drink, and we see Eric sit next to her and says, "Why, hello there, hot stuff. What brings you here to this fine establishment?" The girl begins playing with her hair. She looks at him and says, "Hi, my name's Daisy." Eric looks at the bartender and says, "Hey, get this lovely girl here a drink." Eric places his arm around Daisy's shoulder and says, "So, sweet stuff, do you know who I am?" The bartender gives Daisy her drink. She takes a sip and says, "I don't. Who are you?" Eric chuckles. "Well, I'm Ant-Man, the guy who heroically saved your city today. It was a hard-fought battle, but, you know, for a superhero like me, it was just another day at the office." "Wow, you must be so strong. Thanks for saving the city." Eric smiles. "Well, Daisy, you know what heroes like me get from pretty little things like you for saving the city, right?" "Excuse me?" We watch as Eric leans in for a kiss, and Daisy pushes him away and says, "Oh, no. I was just being nice. I'm not into you like that." Eric chuckles. "Oh, baby, it's not about being into me. It's about giving me what I deserve." As Eric grabs Daisy by the arm, she slaps him in the face and walks out and screams, "Some hero you are, jerk." Eric stands up and screams, "Well, screw you. You weren't even that pretty anyways." We watch as Eric grumpily retakes his seat at the bar. We watch a man sit down next to him and says, "Well, you win some, you lose some, Mr. O'Grady." The man is revealed to be Mr. Forson, who says, "I saw you defeat that armored maniac today in the park. Very heroic. Thanks for saving the city." Eric scoffs. "Well, what's it to you? I just think that you should get the recognition you deserve. It's a shame that Van Dyne is getting the credit for your hard work. You're the one who used those ants to catch that metallic freak off guard. You know, I didn't want to say anything, but you're 100% right. If it wouldn't have been for me, the whole city would have been destroyed." Forson looks at the bartender and asks for whiskey and says, "So Eric, the superhero business. Why did you get involved?" "Well, sort of just came upon it. I got thrown into a job I really didn't have any clue what I was doing in. I met Hank and Janet, and they trusted me enough to make me part of their team." Forson gets his drink and takes a sip. "Thrown into the job? What exactly do you mean?" "Well, I quit my job at S.H.I.E.L.D. after I was caught drinking at work, so I lied on my resume a bit and got the job at PIM Technologies. Now I'm majority owner. No idea how I pulled that off." Forson chuckles. Well, as the greats in business know, you have to lie a bit to make it far in the field of big business. Now back to my original question. Why be a hero?" Eric looks down. "You know, I really don't care about helping people that much. But the fame is nice. You know, people recognize you. Girls love you. Oh, especially the girls. That's the best part. Well, a hero like you getting overshadowed by Van Dyne's side act is going to get a little annoying after a while, don't you think? I mean, Eric, has she even introduced you to the Avengers?" We see Eric begin to grow angry. "You know what? She hasn't." Forson looks at Eric. "Eric, there's no way you're going to achieve the level of success, the level of recognition."
You want it like that? Or do you, where's the ketchup? Do you want it like that, or do you want a bun with cheese on it?
With cheese?
A bun with cheese?
No.
Burger bun with cheese on it?
No.
Just that?
Aye. You just put there.
What?
Just put there.
Put that there?
I'm sorry.
Want the sauce there?
Sorry, I'm gonna do the video.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Hey guys,
Keep
so I
working
got
for Van
the burgers in my
My name
dinner.
is Andrew Forson.
So that's
I can make you the
burgers, so
biggest hero this world has ever seen. Even bigger than Tony Stark. Eric laughs and says, Now you have my attention." We see that under the
Starting stack. Press B.
car, there's a little device attached to the bottom, and we cut outside to see Daisy listening in on a small device. We hear her phone begin to ring as she picks it up. We hear Maria Hill's voice who says, "Agent Johnson, do you have anything?" Daisy stands up. "I do, and you're not going to like what's happening." As she walks away, Daisy is revealed to be S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Daisy Johnson, played by Chloe Bennett. We cut to the Van Dyne household the following morning. We watch Janet sitting on the couch in the living room as she is watching The Godfather Part 2. See that she is at the scene where Michael Corleone discovers who the traitor is. She hears a knock at the door. Janet pauses the movie and opens the door where we see Eric standing outside. Janet smiles. "Eric, what a pleasant surprise!" Eric says nothing and walks inside. Janet stands and looks at Eric. "Is everything okay, Eric?" "Everything's perfectly fine, Janet. Actually, I'm better than ever. I can finally see what's been going on right in front of me this whole time."
Know you're hot. Being hot is a state of mind. You're perfect. Right now at Dreams, when you buy a Tempur Pro Air Smart Cool mattress, you'll receive a free Mega Tempur bedding bundle.
What do you mean, Eric? You've been trying to overshadow me all this time, since I took over at PIM Technologies. You and Hank, you used me when it was convenient. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Janet.
Sorry.
Actually, I'm better than ever. I can finally see what's been going on right in front of me this whole time. What do you mean, Eric? You've been trying to overshadow me all this time, since I took over at PIM Technologies. You and Hank, you used me when it was convenient, but never wanted me to play any role besides sidekick. I realize that now, and you know what? Now that I do, I'm sick of it. Eric, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with you being a sidekick. This is all about preserving Hank's legacy, remember? Eric laughs. Screw Hank's legacy. I never cared about Hank in the first place. I only pretended to keep my job. Sweet paycheck, by the way. Janet begins to tear up. What are you saying, Eric? Eric turns around. What I'm saying, Janet, is that I only used you to the extent I could to benefit myself. And well, you have played your part. I have a new employer now. Someone who I, as majority shareholder in PIM Technologies, will be selling the company to. Someone who will make PIM Technologies, and most importantly me, bigger than ever. Janet begins crying. You can't do that, Eric. That company represents everything Hank worked for. Eric walks up to Janet. Again, I don't care. I'm only here to warn you to stay out of my way. Oh, and to take the microversal entry point. My new boss wants it as a sign of loyalty. Janet clenches her jaw and grabs Eric on the shoulder. Over my dead body. We then watch as Wasp and Ant-Man begin to fight. This time, Janet is enraged and fails to use proper fighting technique and is overpowered by Eric, who's able to knock her out. As we see Janet lying on the ground, we see Eric shrink the microversal entry point, turns around to Janet and says, "Oh, and by the way, there will no longer be an Ant-Man. Just like Hank, he's dead." We watch Eric walk away as Janet lies on the ground, knocked out. We see a car waiting to pick up Eric. As he gets in, we see Forsen sitting in the driver's seat and says, "Oh, very good, Eric, very good. Now let's go make those alterations to your suit I was talking about. We have a lot to do this evening." We cut to the inside of the New York State prison where we see Getz and Cannon standing at the bars of the jail cell. Cannon looks over to Getz and says, "Are you sure he's coming?" "Oh, give it a minute." Suddenly we hear guards screaming as we see a black and red Ant-Man suit grow to normal size and break the locks of both Getz and Cannon. As they step out, the man shrinks back down. As the group walks out, Getz stops and says, "Wait 1 minute." We see Getz pick up a gun from one of the unconscious guards and walks towards one of the cells and says, "Elias, are you in here?" We then see Elias Starr, played by Rainn Wilson, sleeping in a jail cell. "Yes?" He says he sits up. When he is fully upright, we watch as Getz shoots him, killing him, and says, "That's for causing me to get in this place to begin with. If you hadn't screwed up, we would have never been in here." Then watch as Getz and Cannon walk out of the prison as multiple inmates are screaming at them as they walk away. Cut to
JustUsedConfused.com.
Cut to the Van Dyne household the next day. To see Janet sitting on her couch crying with Maria Hill sitting next to her, comforting her. We see Wu sitting across the room who says, "Janet, I'm so sorry to hear about all of this. We will conduct a full investigation, but unfortunately, I have to get back to the prison. We're having to transport all these guys to the upstate following the break-in and killing last night." As Jimmy walks away, another voice begins talking. "Jan, you know I'm always here for you, right?" The voice is revealed to belong to none other than Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans. "Yeah, Cap, I do," says Janet. "Is there anything I can do now, Janet? Because Bucky and I promised a group of veterans we would go speak to them in D.C. tomorrow, but I'll cancel it if I need to. I want to be here for you." "No, Cap. You're fine. Thank you." Cap goes and hugs Janet. As we see him walk out the door, Janet covers her face and leans on Maria, and we see the local news is playing in the background. "I'm so sorry, Maria. I should have trusted you." "Look, Jan, it's okay. I told you, I'm here for you no matter what. I promise." Janet sits up, her eyes are red. "Now we have to figure out how to stop him." Maria shakes her head. "No, Jan. You're going to rest. Go back to grief counseling, and I'm going to figure this one out." Suddenly we see Agent Johnson walk in the front door and says, "Commander Hill, I got the report you wanted." "Who is this?" asks Janet. As Johnson hands the report to Hill, Hill says, "Agent Daisy Johnson, one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s very best. She actually used to work alongside Agent Morse and Agent Barton before they fell in love, but I instructed her to spy on Eric for me. I told you I didn't trust him. It was a good call. Wait until you see those financial reports." Hill and Janet find out that during Eric's time as head of PIM Technologies, he almost bankrupted the company twice and never successfully reported any gains or losses made by the company. Janet begins crying again. "I'm such an idiot. I got so sidetracked by everything I didn't even take a second to look at what Eric was doing. I am single-handedly ruining Hank's legacy more than anyone else could. Such an idiot." Janet begins sobbing as Hill rubs her back and says, "Jan, everything is going to be okay. I promise. I have to go, but I'll be back in a few hours. Agent Johnson, I need to begin preparing a report on O'Grady so we can bring him down. I'll bring us dinner later, okay?" Janet continues sobbing as Hill pats her on the back and says, "I'll be back soon, friend. Stay strong, okay?" As Hill and Johnson walk out the door, Janet sits up and we see various flashbacks to her and Hank together. And suddenly a news headline pops up on the TV screen. "Lang wins all-state karate competition." Janet reads the headline and grabs her remote to turn up the volume as we hear the report say, "Cassie Lang has not only become the first female all-state karate champion to win all of her sets with perfect scores, but she is also the first and only champion to come out of the New York foster system." We watch as Cassie Lang, played by Una O'Brien, gives an interview as we see Janet look down and says to herself, "Well, I guess I need answers." As she gets up, she runs to put on her Wasp suit and runs down to the basement and says, "Where is that darn thing?" She begins digging around drawers. She finds an Altoids can with the spare Ant-Man suit inside. She grabs it and flies away. Cut back to the New York State prison where we see Scott Lang walking into the bathroom as a guard screams, "3 minutes, Lang, then it's time to board. We aren't going to be late shipping you guys off." Lang says, yeah, I'll be ready." As he shuts the door, he notices a ton of ants inside the small bathroom, and suddenly the Ant-Man suit grows to normal size and Scott jumps backwards. He notices a note on the suit that says, "Put this on. Get out of here. We need to talk." Scott quickly grabs the suit and puts it on, shrinks down, and escapes out of the prison. See, the ants lead Scott to the forest nearby, where Scott grows to normal size and comes face to face with Janet. He says, "Oh, hey, it's you. Sorry, I'm a little surprised. Last time I thought you were going to try to kill me, and now you're trying to break me out?" Janet grabs Scott and says, "Listen to me and listen to me well. I don't have the patience to deal with anything right now, and you're going to tell me why you're using that suit or I will beat you so hard you wish you were back in prison." Scott holds his hands up and says, okay, fine. I have a daughter, Cassie. She's a freshman in high school, and I made some bad choices when I was a bit younger. Cassie's mother, my wife, died. And I stopped trying at my job. I couldn't work anymore. I knew they were going to fire me, VistaCorp. So I started stealing from them. I stole documents and intended to sell them to make money. But when I read them, I found out that they were engaging in some corrupt practices and, well, I thought it would be better to release them to the public and sell the documents for myself. Why?
What's your worst essay grade? Probably like a 71. Worst essay grade, probably like a 60%. Probably like a C. Have you tried using Grammarly?
Well, people were being taken advantage of, and I wanted to make my daughter proud. I knew that I had messed up and that I wouldn't be able to see her, but I wanted to at least go out doing something so that she could know that her dad did the right thing. And even though I did the right thing, the state deemed that I was incapable of properly caring for her, so they sent her to a foster care program, and I've been lost ever since. I got the suit, and well, I stole to give her money, to give her presents, so her life could be a bit easier. I didn't use any of it for myself. Gosh, I wish I did. My rent is skyrocketing with all these people coming back. But I know it's not right. But I did it for her. Everything I do for her. We watch as Janet has a flashback to Hank telling her, everything I do for you. As Jen begins tearing up, she hugs Scott and says, I am so sorry, Scott. I'm so sorry. Janet steps back and looks at him. When I was a girl, my dad was my best friend. He always looked after me, played with me, gave me my love for science. One day when he was at work, he unleashed a monster inside his lab. My dad called this creature a symbiote. He studied it all his life. It killed him. Some man named Adam was able to save his lab assistant's life, but my dad died. The thing he loved killed him, and I was left. I worked hard, went to school, wanted to become a scientist like him. But while I was at school, I met this charming yet nerdy guy named Hank. Henry Hank Pym, and I fell in love. He made me a hero, and then he became a hero for the whole world. I lost the two loves of my life, Scott, and I'm sorry for almost causing your daughter to experience that kind of pain, the same kind of pain that I felt for my entire life. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, and I'm sorry I almost made it become a reality for her. Scott stands silent. Wow, Miss Van Dyne, I'm so sorry. Janet smiles. No, Scott. No. I think for the first time I see a bit of Hank left in the world, but I need your help. I need you to make your daughter proud once again. Scott nods and Janet looks at him. Well, actually, how about we pay your daughter a visit? Cut to the inside of a foster home where we see a room with posters of the Rolling Stones, a movie poster from the Karate Kid, and a trophy sitting on a desk. We see Cassie Lang lying on her bed listening to Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles, when suddenly we hear a call from outside that says, Lang, you have a visitor. Cassie remains lying on her bed and the voice says again, Cassie, come on now, someone is here to see you. Cassie moans, I heard you. As she rolls her eyes and gets out of bed, she walks to the hallway where she sees Janet Van Dyne, who says, You must be Cassie Lang. On behalf of PIM Technologies, we want to congratulate you and take you out to a special dinner for winning your karate championship. Cassie looks confused but shrugs and walks outside with Janet. As they exit the building, she tells Cassie to sit in the back seat of the car. As we watch Cassie get in, Scott is sitting in the back. He looks at her and says, Hi, Peanut. Cassie begins tearing up and says, Dad! As the two embrace, Janet begins smiling as she gets a call from Hill. When she answers, Hill says, I have bad news and even badder news. First, Lang escaped from prison. Janet says, "Oh, well, maybe we can find him again." Hill continues, "But we have worse news. This time about Eric." Cut to Pym Technologies as we see Eric in his Black Ant uniform, Getz, Cannon, and Forsen standing around looking at the microversal entry point. Forsen walks around it saying, "Eric, my heroic champion. Thank you for making the transfer of Pym Technologies so easy, and now bring back this beautiful contraption. You do know how to work this thing, correct?" Eric laughs. Duh. It's easy as pie. Now, what exactly are you going to use it for?" Forsen laughs. "Well, based on your reports about what Pym and Van Dyne discovered in the microverse, it could be home to powerful creatures. If that's the case, we will use them to rain terror on New York. We will gather additional quantum energy to fill our pockets, and as New York is destroyed, we will sit and watch. When New York can no longer handle the destruction, Black Ant and Whirlwind will save the day. When the public thanks you for your work, we will demand the immediate release of MODOK from the raft."
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you...
Saying that it was AIM who is working behind the scenes to save New York, and once MODOK is back, we will rule the city. The Avengers will be a second thought, and the public will praise us as gods. I actually have something I've been working on in my spare time as well to help me in the microverse. We see a yellow suit standing in the corner. I am the Scientist Supreme. This suit grants me enhanced power and can harness the energy in the room to create a powerful energy beam. I will conquer the microverse, bring the monstrous inhabitants back, and exact revenge on those who attempted to bring AIM to the ground. We see Cannon standing in front of a revamped Whirlwind suit. So someone tries to interfere, Forsen laughs. Well, they will face the might of Whirlwind and Black Ant, of course. T-minus 2 hours till we execute the plan. Get ready. Cut to the basement of the Van Dyne household as we see Janet walking back and forth as Scott and Cassie watch. "Scott, we are in over our heads here. I don't know if we can beat Eric and AIM. AIM has been against Hank and I since the very beginning. They are dangerous. I just don't know." Scott looks at Janet. "Janet, I know this seems like we are outmatched, but we have to try something. We can't let them get away with this, especially if their goal is to destroy New York. Actually, now that I say that out loud, you're a part of the Avengers, right? How about we just call them? Aren't they around?" Janet looks at Scott. "Nope, it's just you and me, Scott. It's just us." "What the heck is this thing?" yells Cassie from a dark part of the basement, and we see her holding a purple-looking Ant-Man uniform. "Cassie," says Scott, "it's rude to just go through people's stuff without asking." "No, Scott, it's fine. That's one of the first uniforms that Hank tried to make for me. It turned out to be a bit too small for me to fit in, but it's completely functional. Hank didn't want to throw it out because, well, he meant for it to be used by me and wanted to keep it as a memento." Cassie keeps looking at the suit as Janet turns to Scott and says, "Scott, I know I'm asking a lot of you, but are you ready for some on-the-job training?" Scott looks at Cassie, who looks back at him, and as he says, "Well, if I say no, there's a chance Cassie won't have a city to call home, so I'm in." Janet smiles and says, "Well, I'm going to make a call. We head out soon." Scott looks at Cassie and says, "Peanut, I'm going to be gone for a little bit, but stay here, and I'll be right back." "Are you sure?" asks Cassie. "I can come and help you guys if you need." Scott smiles and says, "No, Peanut, we're good. Once I'm back, I don't care what I have to do, how many papers I have to sign, or how many hurdles I have to jump. I'll make sure we are together for the long haul." Cassie walks over and hugs Scott, who kisses her on the head. "I love you, Dad," says Cassie, as Scott smiles and says, "I love you too, Peanut. Always." We cut to Pym Technologies as we see Forsen suited up and preparing to enter the microverse, and we hear an alarm go off and Forsen screams, "Intruders! Remember, kill on sight." We see Cannon suit up in the Whirlwind suit and head towards the front of Pym Technologies. As he does, he sees Wasp and Scott in the Ant-Man suit standing looking at him. Cannon laughs and says, "Oh goody, a rematch. Well, too bad you won't be able to make it past me. Eric would love to watch me kill his replacement." As Wasp and Ant-Man prepare to fight, we see Hill and Johnson run inside as Hill screams, "Make sure don't activate the microversal entry point. We will handle this guy." Wasp and Ant-Man nod as they shrink and run forward. Whirlwind begins chasing after them as Johnson shoots a grappling hook at Whirlwind to get his attention. Hill and Johnson begin fighting Whirlwind. We see Wasp and Ant-Man enter the laboratory where the microversal entry point is located. Forsen laughs and says, "Well, well, well, Miss Van Dyne and the replacement. Looks like I will have the pleasure of exacting my revenge against you before I destroy what's left of your legacy." We see Black Ant grow to normal size as he screams, "You shouldn't have come, Janet. Now I'm going to have to kill you." Wasp looks at Ant-Man and says, "I'll stop the scientist. You stop Eric." Ant-Man nods as we watch Ant-Man fight Black Ant. Wasp begins fighting Forsen as to that Getz is watching on. The combined efforts of Hill and Johnson fighting Whirlwind takes place in the hallway, but all 4 members of the team are being overpowered and beaten. We see both Hill and Johnson on the ground as Whirlwind begins spinning towards them, laughing, saying, "Well, I guess the appetizer is about to be finished," when suddenly we hear a woman scream as Whirlwind goes flying back. Hill looks up, and we see Ava Starr in her ghost costume standing in front of them. She looks back and says, "Are you two okay?" I stand aside. "I have a bone to pick. I heard one of these monsters killed my father." Hill looks stunned. "Ava, I thought Janet cured your quantum phasing." Ava smiles. "She didn't cure it. She gave me the power to control it." As we watch Ava jump at Whirlwind, she phases inside his suit, begins breaking the controls, and phases back out. As the uniform falls to the ground, breaking into pieces. We cut back to the laboratory where we see Ant-Man on the ground with Black Ant grabbing him by the neck. He holds him up saying, "Wow, you really are a pathetic fighter. Janet really couldn't upgrade when finding my replacement, could she?" See Janet bleeding, lying on the ground as Forsen stands over her. "Ever since Hank left AIM, you both thought you were too good for us. You cost us everything. Well, now I can finally rest easy knowing we got the last laugh in the end. The only thing I regret is that I wasn't the one who killed Hank." Janet yells as she pushes Forsen off of her. She screams for Scott to get ready to shrink. We see that the ants have been filing inside the control box of the microversal entry point and have chewed a wire completely, leaving it sparking. Getz looks around the room as Janet flies in front of the control box and removes her helmet and says, "Fine, you win. Go ahead and kill me." We see Forsen aim at Janet as he shoots an energy blast at Janet. She screams, "Now!" as she shrinks. Scott shrinks as well. As Janet flies out, she grabs Scott. The beam hits the control box, causing it to explode. We see Hill, Johnson, and Starr outside with cannon as the entire PIM Technologies building is sucked into a vortex. We see Janet and Scott grow back to normal size, and Scott looks around and asks, "Did we win?" Janet looks at the empty plot of land that used to house PIM Technologies and says, "You know, Scott, I think we did." Suddenly, we hear a familiar voice say, "Not so fast." As Eric grows to normal size, he says, "I escaped that death trap of unstable microversal entry point, and now I'm going to finish you off." Janet looks at him as we see a swarm of ants fly towards Eric and begin crawling inside his suit as he screams. The pain of the bites is too much, and he eventually passes out. Janet looks at Scott, who used the device to call the ants, and says, "Now, Scott, I believe we won." The Beatles' "Here Comes the Sun" begins to play as we get a montage of what happened after the battle. Eric O'Grady is taken to the raft by Jimmy Woo. We see that Maria Hill was able to get Scott custody back of Cassie, and the two hug each other. We see Ava Starr in a SHIELD uniform walking with Daisy. We see Janet in grief therapy, followed by her building a new microversal entry point in the abandoned building from Endgame and Ant-Man and the Wasp microverse. We also see Cassie in the purple Ant-Man suit training with her dad and Janet. The movie ends a few weeks later as we see Maria Hill hugging Janet at the outside of the abandoned building as she says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Janet smiles. "Yeah, I am. Thanks for being my friend all these years, Maria. You have meant so much to me and to Hank. Let Fury know I appreciate him as well. I love you." Hill smiles and walks away with a tear in her eye. Janet walks to the building as we see Scott and Cassie standing at the rebuilt microversal entry point as Scott says, "Isn't this like the fourth one of these you've built?" Janet laughs. Yeah, they seem to be a ton of trouble, so hopefully this is the last one. Scott looks at Janet and says, "Are you sure you want to go down there for a whole week? That's going to be like almost more than an hour down there." Janet chuckles. "Scott, I made peace with my father and Hank being gone, but Hank had one goal before he died. He wanted to explore the microverse more, and now I have the opportunity to do that." Scott smiles and says, "Well, if anyone can do it, it's you, Miss Van Dyne." She walks up to the platform. She places her hand on Scott's shoulder and says, "Scott, don't stop being the good person you are. Because that heart of yours, it gives meaning to the Ant-Man. It gives meaning to what Hank stood for." Scott looks a bit confused, but says, "Thanks, Janet. I can't wait to keep fighting alongside you." Janet smiles and looks at Cassie and says, "Cassie, I used to always watch Hank's back for him. Make sure you do the same for your father." Cassie smiles and says, "Yes, ma'am." As we see Janet stand on the microversal entry point, Scott begins a countdown, activates the switch, and we see a blinding light. The light clears. Nothing remains of the microversal entry point. Scott freaks out and Cassie keeps asking what happened, when suddenly Hank's old computer, sitting to the side of the room, begins to flash. Text scrolls across the screen, which reads, "Thanks, Scott, for helping me head out on my next adventure. The microverse is my new home. I know that now, more than ever, I'll be close to Hank. Keep up the legacy. Ant-Man and the Stinger." As the computer shuts off, Scott tears up as Cassie pats him on the back and says, "Dad, let's make Janet proud." As the movie ends, a screen pops up that reads, "Ant-Man and the Stinger will return." In the first post-credit scene, we see Janet crash into the microverse and begin wandering around, when suddenly we hear a voice who says, "Hello? Who are you?" "My name's Arctus Ran," played by Zachary Levi. "And we could use your help." In the second post-credit scene, we see a dark room with a mysterious black book that begins to glow. We see a woman dressed in purple walk up and grab the book. She walks into a room with shadowy figures sitting in it. "Sisters, Chthon has spoken to me. The Scarlet Witch moves closer to being awakened. The secret is unlocking the X gene." As we see Agatha Harkness, played by Kathryn Hahn, move into the moonlight of the room, she smiles and says, "It's time to make the Elder God proud." And that is Ant-Man.
So okay, that's the video, you guys. Ant-Man was Reborn. So yeah, so this video is a longer video, but I'm sorry guys, because I was video but then moving damages, but I'm sorry about that. So anyway, so obviously night time, bye.